Hello everyone, you are watching ITV Gold and I'm your host Aditi Lamba. Joining us in person again is ITV Gold's political commentator, Mr. Rohit Vyas. Thank you so much for being with us here on ITV Gold in studio.
Thank you. Nice to have you and nice to be with you in your presence.
Of course, we have so many questions for you, so let's go right into it. My first question to you has to be about the biggest news for this country and for the world right now, a huge matter of concern. President Biden has called it a concern and not a panic situation yet. We're talking about the Omicron variant that has been found in South Africa. And there are chances that it's already present in the United States because it's already there in Canada and other countries. We're hearing news that the stock market has already started getting impacted by that. So my first question to you is, this is just news right now. They haven't even found exactly out what exactly this variant is doing. Why is the stock market already getting impacted and how bad can this get?
Well, because the stock market always looks for a reason to be nervous, for one thing. You have a bear market, you have a bull market. There's been a long bull run. And anything that seems, that appears could apply the brakes to progress in the rise of stocks, in the rise in the progress of movement forward in the economy, etc., would be seen as something to be of concern. And so the moment word broke from South Africa last week about this new variant and its several mutations, about 50 mutations, which means it could even compromise vaccines. They don't know that for sure. It became a matter of huge concern for the world economy, not just for the world health system, but the economy itself, and therefore the stock market reacted. The stock market is going to continue to react, but all this has proven is that we're going to have to, in my opinion, learn to live with COVID for the long run, just like flu. It's something we should have seen once we saw variants coming out, and I think most health experts, I am not one of them, but most health experts would agree with my assessment that we are now going to have to learn to live with this in its various variants. And so concerns will be there right now, but once we start to learn how to deal with it as a human race, I think all of this will be in the background. So I'm actually more optimistic. And as you said at the outset, we still don't know exactly the full extent of this. President Biden has said it's a matter of concern, but not a matter of panic, and he's absolutely right. As a matter of fact, the same South African doctor who discovered this mutation and this variant and revealed it to the government of South Africa, and then had the government of South Africa and in turn warned the world about it, says it doesn't appear, this doctor says she doesn't think it's that serious, it doesn't have serious symptoms that forces hospitalization of victims. So that's the good part of this, and I think there is some reason to be optimistic at this point. If it spreads, we shouldn't be surprised, because there are many unvaccinated people in our population here in the US, as is the case around the world. And so those who are unvaccinated will be the ones who will be infected and carry it.
So that it makes sense to our audience. The biggest concern and fear of the stock market is what? A shutdown again?
Yeah.
Economy crashing again? And because of that, it's already getting affected.
Yeah.
How does that make sense?
All of the above. I mean, if you've got a variant that is serious in scope, okay, as we've had with the Delta variant and the pandemic itself, COVID-19, when it first came out. If you have a serious situation like that where you have lockdowns, there's going to be a problem with the economy, and therefore stocks will be directly affected. Now, that's already begun in Europe. You have Austria, for instance, which is in total lockdown, at least for 2 weeks. We've got Israel, which only today or yesterday announced that they're going to be locking out foreigners. Non-Israelis cannot enter the country for 2 weeks. All right. You're seeing other countries in Europe beginning to impose lockdowns. The Netherlands is another one. And once that begins and you have a chain reaction, obviously it's going to start to affect the supply chain once again, which is still a problem. The ramifications of the supply chain shakeup and irregularities are consequential of what happened with the beginnings of the pandemic last year in March of 2020, officially, when the whole world literally came to a standstill. So it's going to affect everything. The fear of a lockdown, the lockdown itself, if it does occur and is imposed around the world, will directly affect the economy, and therefore stocks will see a downward turn. The bears will rule once again.
And there is already travel restrictions being placed in different countries to keep some of the South African countries out of their country. What does that do globally to politics and to the economy? And, will we be affected in the next coming months globally?
As far as politics and global relations and things, it's already affected relations between those African nations and the rest of the world, because South Africa took the lead in saying, look, our scientists were proactive. They were looking at these cases. They examined, did research immediately into why there was a sudden surge, a spurt in cases of COVID, and they discovered the variant. And they said, because of our responsibility toward the rest of the world, we're all one big family on this planet. South Africa had the responsibility and did the responsible thing, and President Biden paid them tribute. That they came out and said, look, we're warning the world that there is this new variant that we've discovered. We don't know for sure, too, if it originated in South Africa or anywhere in Africa. It might have come from somewhere else into South Africa. But the South Africans are the first ones to talk about it and are facing the consequences. So politically, it's already become a sensitive issue because South Africa and some of the other countries in the region, Botswana and the others, have been saying, look, we discovered it. We don't know if it came from here, but it's unfair to suddenly lock us out when it might be in other countries. And now we're finding out Canada's got it. We might have it here in the United States. Dr. Anthony Fauci has already said it's a given. It'll be here. We don't know for sure, but it's probably here. Europe has already seen cases of it. So, I mean, it wouldn't be right. So politically, it's going to cause sensitivities at the higher levels and at the people-to-people level. But we're going to have to deal with it again. It's the same situation.
Wow. It just complicates the entire situation when you have these travel bans between countries. That's a lot. Some people want to go back and they can't.
I frankly don't think we're going to be able to sustain a world like this if we're going to keep having lockdowns, etc. Now, I'm not trying to give a radical opinion or anything like that, but we've seen resistance around the world already. You've had the lockdowns, you've seen the consequences of it. We've all been in prolonged lockdowns, everyone, you, me. This is not, we're privileged to now be in the studio and be able to talk to each other face to face. I don't think either you or I is going to want to be back in a lockdown.
No.
So I think we're all going to have to learn as a planet and as people of how we can deal with this. It's going to be endemic, and to deal with it and to do it piecemeal. So if we think there's an infection, for instance, in this room, then maybe Aditi and Rohit Vyas would be speaking to each other remotely from separate rooms. Something of that sort will have to evolve in terms of dealing with the virus now.
Yes, definitely. And just a little bit more on economy and what's happening in the nation. Gas prices. It's affecting everyone. The president has commented on it. There's a lot of speculation about why the gas prices are so high, and they just keep on, going at it. How are you looking at that?
Yeah, that's also partially a consequence of the pandemic and the bottlenecks, the supply chain holdups, and all the rest of it. Partly not, partly political. There are the oil-producing countries that choose to restrict, the supplies and the output in order to make more money. Because during the pandemic, they didn't make that much of money. This is a good time to apply constraints, as it were. You would call this a sort of hoarding. So that's one of the theories I have, that some of the nations are deciding to play it tough and hardball everybody else, give a hard time to everyone. All right, you want gas now, you're suddenly opening up. We're going to charge you more, and we're going to keep the supplies restricted. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is a genuine supply problem. And President Biden, the White House, has already talked about tapping into the oil reserves here to try and see if that brings it down. But inflation is a problem in the United States in particular. It's a big problem right now, and I think the Biden administration has to get a grip on it really quickly. They've already, he's already nominated Jerome Powell as the, Fed chair again for the next term, which means the Fed chair, the government, the Treasury, all will have to work to figure out where they're going to have to apply the brakes so that inflation is now under control.
Yeah, it may be the end of the year, but the Biden administration has a lot
Yeah.
going on right
On
now.
its in its hands. Yes, right now it does.
Yes, on from all angles. Let's now talk about another big news that caught my attention, everyone else's attention, and I think that the audience should have a little bit more information on it. These nuclear talks with Iran, for years, they have been going back and forth between the two countries. Many look at the nuclear power in Iran as dangerous for the rest of the world. Iran obviously wants to probably have a hold and a stake in the nuclear weapon power. How are you looking at this, and how does this affect the common person living here?
A very serious issue. The nuclear talks with Iran have restarted in Vienna, even as you and I are speaking here in the studio at ITV Gold. They've begun in Vienna. These are not direct talks between Iran and the USA. As you recall, the Trump administration, 2015 was when the Iran nuclear deal was signed in the Paris Accords. And, Iran seemed to be about a year away from being able to produce a nuclear bomb because they needed enriched uranium, which is what they were producing. But with the deal, there was the inspection being carried out by the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, a UN body, which is tasked with keeping a check on Iran's ability to produce uranium fuel, which is needed to produce a nuclear bomb. Now, President Trump came, as you know, came in and tossed out the agreement.
Yeah.
And instead, and by the way, the sanctions which were imposed on Iran until 2015 were then, withdrawn, so that the economy, they were able to make money by selling oil and things like that, which Iran is a huge oil supplier, a huge oil producer. Okay, but with President Trump coming in, 2016 election, and having come in and tossed out the agreement and then reimposing sanctions and doubling those efforts, it weakened Iran's economy. But then you had the regime that decided, okay, if that's the case, we're going to start ramping up our production of nuclear fuel, namely uranium. So now they have this ability to produce enriched fuel, enriched uranium, which can be used for producing a nuclear bomb. So, as I was saying, they were a year away at that time from being able to produce a bomb. With the time that's lapsed since they were thrown out of the agreement, and the agreement was repealed by the United States under President Trump, Iran has, in all probability, stepped up the production of uranium fuel, which means they could be anywhere from 3 to 1 month away from the capacity to produce a bomb. So these talks in Vienna are extremely urgent. These talks in Vienna are extremely important for the common man, not just here in the United States, but around the world. Because if you have an Iran that possesses or is able to build a nuclear bomb, everyone knows the significance of that, or should know the significance of that. It could disrupt all that's happening in the Middle East.
Yeah.
The calm and the peace at this time in the Middle East could be entirely disrupted, and we could have a really serious situation, not just the tensions between the United States and Iran itself, but in that entire region, which will have consequences for the entire world.
Right.
So these talks are extremely important, but they're intermediaries right now that are representing the U.S. side and the Iranian side, because both refuse to talk to each other. The U.S. is open. The U.S. is actually open to direct talks, but the Iranians are now hardballing and saying no. They have a new president who's a hardliner, and he will not come in to talk to the United States unless certain demands are met. No?
It's very interesting. The United States is a part of creating nuclear power, and it's been there. It's one of the leaders. And many people that are talking about this Iran situation are criticizing the U.S., saying, if you can produce it, why are you stopping the rest of the nations? If you're doing it, why are you stopping another one? How do you respond to that?
Well, that's true. I mean, those who've had it have it, but most of the countries that have it right now have proven to exercise restraint. Okay? With a nation like Iran, you're not certain, especially with a hardline regime. Now, if they had a democratic regime where, where people were voting the leaders to power and things like that, I think you'd be less fearful. But when you have hardliners, when you have extremely authoritarian-like figures up there, Ali Khamenei and all the rest of it, I mean, what's going to come eventually. There's not going to be restraint. There'll be one flashpoint where someone like that, a leader who's a hardliner, suddenly decides, okay, heck with it, I'm going to use the bomb. We know in today's world, the United States is not going to use the nuclear option. It's not going to be the first one to do it. Neither are any of the other members of the nuclear club. I don't think Russia is going to be doing it. I don't think China is going to be doing it. I don't think India is going to be doing it. France, the UK, none of these people.
All democracies.
You know they're not, well, the other two are not, Russia and China, but you know they're responsible enough.
Yeah.
I mean, at least at that level, you know, they know they're not going to, we know they're not going to use it. Iran, unknown factor. And so therefore there's the uncertainty, and therefore you'd rather see them not have it than have it.
Yeah.
Because bargaining with them will be a whole different ballgame altogether.
The
once they
Middle
have a
East
weapon.
is
Yeah.
one interesting area. There's so much going on in every region of that. I have two more questions left here for you. I would like for you to just quickly comment on what's happening with the January 6th investigation. There's a lot of subpoenas being sent out, subpoenas being denied, people not showing up to their hearings. Why is that happening? And what is the core purpose, do you think it is right now, of this investigation?
I think those who are being called, and they're mostly Republicans who served under Trump as former officials, etc. They're trying to resist Congress's authority, is the way I look at it. And by not showing up, you see a congressional subpoena, a congressional committee subpoena. I see what they're trying to do is differentiate between a congressional subpoena and a legal subpoena coming from a court of law. And what they're trying to do is say, okay, we'll defy the congressional subpoena. What are they going to do? They can't throw us in jail. Actually, they can. They can bring charges against you. They can bring criminal charges against you for, ignoring a subpoena. A subpoena is, Congress is the court of the people, in a sense. It's the court of the people, right? So it's still a court. It's not in the legal sense a court, but in a democratic sense within our government, it's a court. It's the court of the people. It's the people's decision, and therefore people are summoning you before them, before their representatives, to give testimony. You got to appear. You have to appear. It's the same thing as going on jury duty. You can't just ignore it. You got to give an excuse if you don't want to appear, etc., etc. But you can't just ignore it. So I think this is a standoff between those who want to sort of break the democratic institution of Congress, of the Senate, etc., break that institution and say there's a difference. You guys do what we tell you. You don't dictate to us and we don't have to obey you. It's that kind of scenario I see playing out. I'm trying to simplify it, but I think I'm pretty much right in giving that description, because that's exactly what's playing out over here. Now, if the courts were to come out and issue a subpoena, I bet you Steve Bannon and all of them, they're not going to ignore it. They'll show up because the next thing you have are marshals at your doorstep taking you to prison.
Oh, wow.
Big difference,
Do you think they will get involved?
I'm sure who, the marshals, etc.
Yeah.
They would be if criminal charges are brought, then it would be the marshals that would have to come in. It would then go to a court that would effect that criminal, the summons, etc. And then they would have to come before the court. Yeah.
What political chaos?
Well, it won't be chaos. At that point, it'll be a judicial process. It'll go through the judiciary, and then the judicial system would decide and advocate, all right, you have to go before Congress or else go to jail.
Yeah.
So that's my understanding of how it would work.
Yeah, very, very interesting investigation. Again, I still can't believe January 6th happened to begin with, but we can only learn from it. My last question to you has to be about a good news. There is this person named Parag Agarwal. He is South Asian, and he has been named the CEO of Twitter.
Yeah.
And these outgoing Twitter CEO has said that he's doing it to give Twitter a new, platform, a new vision.
And a break from the founders.
Exactly.
Yeah, a break from the founders. First of all, Parag Agarwal's appointment, and he's only 45 years old, as was Jack Dorsey, his predecessor. Now predecessor. I can't believe he's the predecessor, but yeah, his now predecessor. 45 years old. This appointment of another Indian, once again, as a CEO of a huge, corporation, a huge company, is a tribute, in my opinion, to the Indian education system. He is another product of the Indian Institute of Technology from Mumbai in his case. If you look at any of the CEOs in America today that are of Indian origin, and there are many of them, a case in point, Ajay Banga of MasterCard, and there are so many others, a vast majority of them come from the IITs in India or from the IIMs, or both, the IITs and the IIMs, which is the Indian Institute of Management. In the case of Banga, he's from IIM Ahmedabad. And it's a testament to the education system in India that Indian CEOs are the most sought after around the world. There is something in the education that's inculcated into students at those institutions of higher learning that makes them most desirable. And here we have yet another example. Why is it that every board of a company, when there is a change, chooses an Indian CEO? Because there's a track record, not just of their educational makeup and background, but of the use of that educational makeup and background in administering and managing huge companies with thousands of employees around the world. I think it's a fantastic testament to Indians, to India's education system, and Parag Agarwal being the latest to join those ranks is an amazing piece of news, but not surprising to me.
At all.
Not at all.
Very good. Well, this was amazing to have you here in the studio with us. I hope to have you again very soon.
Yeah.
I would just like to know your prediction politically for the next month, if you could tell us what's happening that you're looking forward to.
I see there's going to be it'll be a tough time for the Democrats right now. If we're talking about domestic politics, it's going to be a tough time for the Democrats because no matter what, with inflation and the rest of it, the Democratic Party seems to be losing ground. They should actually be gaining ground at this stage, but they're not. And they need to watch their backs and watch their steps going forward, I think, to salvage what they have, because 2022 is coming up upon us very soon.
The midterms.
Coming up, and the midterms are always a tricky time for any incumbency. And so a lot of the people who are in power now may not be there. And those who are in power for the longer term after that will have their wings clipped. So it's a very, very dicey time for the Democratic Party and for the Republicans as well, because they too will have to grasp a particular leadership role, but choose a leader that they think will take them into the next, couple of years. So the next month or two would be absolutely tumultuous in our domestic politics. Yeah.
Well, I look forward to talking more about the midterms when we get closer to it.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Thank you. Thank you.